On this episode of the Part-Timer Podcast, I sit down and talk to Cubs pipeline guru Tim Huwe. You can follow him on Twitter at Tim815. A really knowledgeable guy. Had a good conversation with him, so stay tuned for that. I'll also cover the Blackhawks and Bulls, but not that much because who really wants to talk about them? All right, let's go. Episode 13 of the Part-Timer Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, subscribing, liking, sharing. You know, the whole thing that you're supposed to do, I guess. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please leave a rating. I would appreciate that. And wherever else, hit that follow and subscribe button. Also, doing an idea that I thought was pretty cool. So if you haven't yet heard about it, here you go. Friday's episode, because it's Valentine's Day. Oh, I was thinking of compiling a bunch of audio clips from you guys and girls explaining why you love sports, and I'll throw them all in, and every single person is going to be on the podcast on Friday. I just think taking a break from how bad Chicago sports have been, I feel like it's a good idea, right? Makes us feel grateful and stuff or whatever. So if you're interested in that, all you got to do is send a voicemail into the show just explaining why you love sports. Could be I like this team, I love this team, or the game specifically, whatever you want to share. 815-714-9044. Again, 815-714-9044. And those will all be played on Friday's show. I'll quickly cover the Hawks and Bulls. Okay, so the Bulls lost again. That's 6 straight. They're 19 and I believe it's 36 or 37. 10th place in the East. Not going to make the playoffs. Jim Boylan's the worst. Okay, and the Hawks lost too. The first 10 available points, they have 4. That's not going to cut it. When are we going to all meet in the middle and say they suck? When is that going to happen? It's not a bad thing. They're young. They have young players. They're allowed to suck. But, can we just admit it? When is that going to happen? How many games do they have to lose? How many points do they have to be out of the wild card spot for us to agree that they suck? And that you just let me know, and I'll be there waiting for everybody to show up. I don't want them to suck, but they do. Bad coaching, a lot of inconsistency with players, recipe for sucking. They're traders at the deadline, so get ready. I don't know who's going. Think it's Crawford. Could be Gustafson. Could be Saad. Saad's playing out of his mind right now. That's why I really think he could go. So just start writing your goodbye letters on Twitter and your thank you posts on Facebook to somebody who you've been watching for a while. There's not much else to say, man. You can't really... It's like beating a dead horse at this point. They play Vancouver tonight when you're listening to this. The Sedin brothers are getting their... Is it their numbers retired, or are they just being honored? I think it's their numbers. Yawn. I hated them. But, nonetheless, still a game to play. And I'm not sure how... I mean, get 2 points. I won't get into it. Just get 2 points. And then we'll see what happens the rest of the year. They're not making the playoffs, in my opinion. Not a chance. Not the way they've been playing. Could it change? Sure. Could my opinion change? Yeah. Will it? Probably not. I'll admit it, though, if it does. And I'll say, hey, I was wrong. They're playing really good hockey right now. But until then, sticking to my opinion. And not nudging either. You can't convince me. Okay. That's enough, right? It's enough depression and frustration and just agony. This conversation with Tim Huwe, we covered a lot. It's the majority of the podcast. And we talk relief pitchers. We talk perspective for Cubs fans. As White Sox fans, I think need a little bit going into this season. We also discuss Nico Hoerner and his role with the club this season, where he thinks he will start, where Tim thinks he'll start. Also talk pipeline because that's his expertise. And again, we covered a lot, including the Marquee Network. So without further ado, I appreciate his time, and I know you'll like this interview. Here is Tim Huwe. Joining me on the podcast now, he is a Cubs insider, if you must. He's got a ton of information on the pipeline and the future of the Cubs. You can follow him on Twitter at Tim815. He's a contributor for Bleed Cubby Blue, and his podcast is Pre-Arb Excellence, wherever you listen to podcasts. Tim Huwe joins me on the podcast now. Hey, Tim, how's it going?
Oh, I'm wonderful. Thanks for having me on.
Good. No problem. Thanks for being here. I wanted to get to a few things, and we were talking before today about what we really wanted to cover here.
Right.
And I'm not sure if you saw today the headlines. Joe Maddon had some things to say about his time with the Cubs and how Theo Epstein does business. But
I saw the headline. I didn't read the article, but I did see the headline, and it's not horribly surprising because when you have two people with strong opinions, they won't necessarily jive.
That's kind of where I was going with it too. I think obviously such a successful manager in the major leagues, and you also have a front office who, quite frankly, just knows how to win. And obviously, like you said, heads are going to clash, and I really do think that regardless of how that relationship kind of evolved, I still think that it was Joe Maddon's time to go. Obviously
it was successful. It was successful until it wasn't.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think you have to, in today's game, I think you have to move on quick before you really dig yourself a hole. So, regardless of what anybody thinks about the David Ross hire, it's kind of a new era for Cubs management. But that's that's kind of all I really wanted to say on that. I mean, obviously, a lot of people are going to have their opinions on Joe Maddon and all of that going on.
And if anyone has anything to say about the Maddon probably used David Phelps a lot more than Epstein wanted, and used Dwayne Underwood a bit less than Epstein would have wanted. I agree entirely.
Yeah. So
because I think that Epstein was looking to 22, 23, 24, and Maddon was still, I want to win now.
That's 100% on the money, because in that in that interview that he did with, I believe his name is Adrian Gonzalez out in California, he literally said, I'm an in-the-moment guy. I go off of intuition and feel. So, yeah, he's a now guy, and Epstein, of course, rightfully so, because of his job title, has to think of the future, and it just didn't work. So I think anybody who wants to read so far into it, I think they're doing themselves a disservice. I think it just is what it is.
Sometimes a friendship works up until it doesn't.
Absolutely. So now we move into 2020, and there's a few things that are still kind of in limbo. But looking at spring training, actually the pitchers and catchers for the Cubs report today.
Correct.
So what do you I guess what's your feel going into spring training? Because this team was projected to win 90 games last year, and they fell short of that, and there was a lot of frustration on the north side. But what's your overall feel going into spring training this year?
I'm fascinated by uncertainty. And for so long, last year it was, we'll have this guy who we're familiar with in the bullpen, this other guy that we're really. This year it's the Flaming Wick brothers and Kyle Ryan and hopefully Craig Kimbrell and a whole bunch of guys that nobody has any idea of. It's wonderful.
Yeah,
preseason baseball. Preseason baseball is supposed to be about, I have no idea who this guy is. Maybe I should learn something.
100%. 100%. I think that's really gonna be a something to look at when the Cubs are playing their spring training games, because not so much on the south side of Chicago, but on the north side, I really think that you can have some players on that team this year that are brand new to not only the major leagues, but to everybody's mind.
Fans.
Yeah.
Yeah. When Jarrell Cotton takes the mound, how many people really have a dossier on him that they're familiar with?
Yeah, you're going to see everybody on their phones at Wrigley.
No idea.
Yeah, they're going to...
There's a term I like to use, tabula rasa, clean slate, no idea.
Well,
Jarrell Cotton takes the mound. Dan Winkler takes the mound. Casey Sadler takes the mound. Take notes.
Yeah.
These are people that might actually be on the team, and as a fan, you're more than welcome to have opinions on, I kind of like this guy's fastball. This guy's slider tends to miss a little bit outside. If you watch baseball long enough, you're smarter than you give yourself credit for.
Very true.
Watch the players, and I still call Trevor McGill, but it is Meggle, even though it looks like it should be McGill. And he's on he's the Rule 5 selection that either has to stick with the team the whole year or get offered back to San Diego. And again, a guy who nobody has any idea of. And if you're going to say off of one appearance or two appearances, oh my goodness, this guy's terrible, you probably don't understand how players develop in baseball.
Yeah,
because
that's
until a guy is 23, 25, 27, he's not developed. He just isn't.
No, I think the one concern that I have as a baseball fan is, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the Cubs did a magnificent job of developing young pitchers. They've done a great job of developing their position players, but I just feel like, aside from a few arms, I think their pitching prospect pool is pretty shallow.
The prospect pool is fine, but the prospect pool is nowhere near – well, the prospect pool isn't ready to help in 2020. There are players that in 2022, 2023, Corey Abbott, Raylan Marquez, a handful of different names, they could be really good or they could be nothing. I don't know if you grew up with a mom that had a spice rack.
Yeah, always. I think that's a staple.
Oh, yeah. But some mothers have a spice rack and some moms have a spice rack. And, it's 5 shelves, at least 25 wide. The Cubs, through their player development system, in their pitching staff, they've had a couple of ingredients missing.
Sure. Yeah, and
I don't know what they are. But they've been missing, and until those ingredients get located, it's getting better, because when the Cubs picked up Rowan Wick and Brad Wick, I expected nothing. When they picked up Kyle Ryan, I was thinking, why not? But he's not going to be any good. And he's figured some things out.
Yeah,
they're getting there.
I think,
but they're not there yet.
I think the one real thing that people are going to be paying attention to going into this spring training is obviously, not only the guys who can possibly make the team out of spring training, but the biggest watch for me is Craig Kimbrell, because he didn't he didn't have, it was a risk signing. I mean,
it was bad.
The Cubs needed to make that move, in my opinion, and it was a half a season it didn't work out, but now he had the entire winter. He's going to have an entire spring training, and to be honest with you, I think it's going to be just a matter of time. I don't think he's going to turn into the Kimbrell of the Red Sox, but I think he's going to be an extremely efficient and effective closer. Yeah. I think he'll...
My thought...
Go ahead.
My thought on the Kimbrell signing when it happened is completely different from anyone else's because some people were, oh, yeah, we have to go get Kimbrel. Some people were, oh, no, he's not worth that much money. Mine was significantly different. Mine was, I'm glad they waited until after the draft because if they would have signed him before the draft, they would have lost Chase Strum, Kevin Made, and Brian Altuve, who are now 3 players who are in their pipeline because they would have lost international spending money and a draft pick. So I'm glad they have him. And if it does end up working out horribly, that too shall pass. His 3-year contract will eventually lapse. But, yeah, I think he'll be adequate at least.
Yeah, I think, you said it. That too shall pass. It's a baseball move. Some of them work, some of them don't. But how do you we're talking with Tim Huwe. You can follow him on Twitter at Tim815. You have a pretty extensive knowledge, and you're showing it here of who's coming up in the Cubs system. Not necessarily who's literally next in AAA, but you really have a hold on who's at the bottom of the pile that could make their way toward the top. So with that being said, going into the spring training, who do you have your eyes on as far as hey, this guy could surprise a lot of people and be a tough decision to make for the organization, whether they have a big league spot or they start the year in the minors?
There are 3 names that if your listeners aren't familiar with them, Braylon Marquez he was signed for a reasonable amount, 100,000, I think. I'd have to look it up. I think it's about 100,000. Left-handed pitcher, about 6'4", 6'5". All of a sudden, 2 years ago, he started throwing 96, 97. People say, oh, that's kind of cool. Last year, he did rather well in the Midwest League. They decided to move him up to the Carolina League, advanced A level, getting kind of close to the major leagues. And with a new pitching coach and a new manager and a new catcher behind the plate, they adjusted he had been throwing a lot of everything. Throw a fastball, throw a curve, throw a slider, throw this, throw that. When he got to the Carolina League, this was how they were announcing it. First pitch, 99, fastball for a strike. Second pitch, 100 for a strike. 99, 100, 101, 100, 99, 98. Not 100, then drops to 97, then drops to – no, he was sitting 100, 99 all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then he'd throw a slider or a change, and the batter would look silly. Braylon Marquez, if he stays healthy, he's already out at spring training. He will pitch in a game. And people are going to say, oh, my goodness, this guy could be good.
Yeah, that's a name that's a name that came up. Who else you got?
The catcher that was the catcher in Myrtle Beach that kind of guided him along the line, Miguel Amaya. He's one of these types of players who his batting average might be a bit low. He hits for power. He does all the little things behind the plate, all the little things. And whenever people talk about character, he makes pitchers better. Isn't that part of the job of a catcher?
Absolutely.
Do you think he might get along well with David Ross?
So you don't think? Let's say, he really shows out in spring training.
Mm-hmm.
What do they do with Caratini? Do they because you have the extra man on the roster this year? Do they run with 3 catchers, or you don't think he's making it?
Ready. I wouldn't mind running with 3 catchers, but if they go with 3 catchers, it won't be the 3 anyone's necessarily thinking of. Josh Begley is a guy who was actually the A's starter last year. He didn't have a great season, but he played 100 games. I think he started about 90 of them. He hit about 230, hit a little bit of power. But if you have a guy who knows how to catch, you have a guy who knows how to catch. It's kind of like back in the day, somebody was telling me they'd gone out to a pickup game at a college, and 40-year-old Dave Corzine was clubbing people as a backup, as a center at a pickup game because he knows how to play pivot. If you know how to be a big guy in basketball, you know how to be a big guy. If you know how to be a catcher, you're valuable. I wouldn't object too much to Josh Begley being on the roster if he plays well, but he'd have to do that.
Yeah, as a White Sox fan who watched Josh Begley come up, I don't think
you're not buying.
No,
okay.
I just think the Oakland situation was prime for him because they needed somebody and he fell into their lap. Yeah, so I mean, sure, could he surprise everybody? I have more faith in him than I did Tyler Flowers, but. Tim, you have no idea. I hated Tyler Flowers. I think he could. I think he could surprise some people, and not necessarily make the roster, but he's obviously going to be the first guy they call up if Caratini.
AAA guy.
Yeah, or somebody.
He's the leader of the. He's going to be the 2020 version of Taylor Davis.
Sure. I don't know if Cubs fans. I don't know if Cubs fans like that though. I don't know Taylor Davis. I don't know if people are going to appreciate the Taylor Davis comparison. They're going to want him to stay in AAA for forever.
But no, Miguel Amaya will start AA.
Okay.
That's where he belongs. For too long, the Cubs have hurry rushed people up to the major leagues. Now you can say there were some pitchers in the 90s that they did that with and completely ruined their arms and their careers. They rushed Corey Patterson. They rushed Starlin Castro. They rushed Ian Happ. They're just by the bucketful. The Cubs have, we need this guy. Stop with it. What the Cubs need to do, Miguel Amaya, you go play in AA, kick butt there, be an all-star, stay there until July, and if you're doing as well as we hope, then you move up to AAA, and then we'll decide after that. But this constant, I want this guy because he's doing well in AA. No! Do you want the guy to show up and do like Robel Garcia did, and he's okay for a week and a half and then he's not? Or do you want him to actually learn what he has to learn? Learn it A-ball, learn it AA, learn it AAA. You learn different things at every level. At AAA, what people don't understand is that's where a lot of change-up pitchers go. Change-ups, curveballs. You get so many hitters who they can hit 97 and straight. And since they can hit 97 and straight in AA ball, they get called up to the major leagues, and they can hit 97 and straight, but all of a sudden they see 88 and curvy, and they turn into Jobu.
Yeah, I think that's a common theme with young players. I personally saw that with Eloy Jimenez last year. He was constantly chasing that curveball, and then it just takes time. It just takes time and development.
Yeah.
So
it takes time. Takes time and development, and you have sometimes the best place to at least get to a ground level is in AAA. When you crush AAA, when you have a 900 OPS in AAA, and you're showing that you're better than that league, call them up, sure, but not until then.
So speaking of call-ups, last season there was a pretty exciting call-up for the Cubs because he produced in Nico Hoerner. So what do you think? Where is his place on the Cubs this year? Is it in the minors? Is he starting with the big club? Where do you see him fitting into this 2020 club?
I see him in Des Moines for a couple months for two reasons. One, because to use the Chris Bryant terminology, 8 is more than 7. If they leave him in Iowa, and they can entirely justify leaving him in Iowa for a month and a half, then they eliminate the service time question. We don't know what the new collective bargaining agreement is going to be if there ever is one. But I'd rather have Hoerner for 8 years instead of 7. And I really think they can send him to AAA. He can play every day, learn all the things he has to, face the guys who get people out. Well, who's the left-hander for the Mets that was throwing Vargas, Jason Vargas. He's such an amusing pitcher because his fastball tops out at 85, and he gets people out in Major League Baseball. Explain that.
Well, Greg Maddux did it at the end of his career, so.
Yeah, change up after change up after change up, and until you've seen that, you haven't seen it. And it's sometimes the best place to do that is AAA. I'd like to see Hoerner playing AAA because then he'll play every day.
Sure.
And he needs to play every day. He needs to play some at second, some at shortstop. Throw him out in center field. Let him play right field. Why not? Let him play wherever. Let him get used to you're going to play where we need you. And if he's playing at the major league level from March 20, whatever the date is, they can't always play him because they're trying to win the game. And if there's a matchup situation, then you'll want to get him out of the game. I like just go play, have fun. He didn't play in AAA last year. He was in AA. Their season ended. He was sitting at home. It's like, oh, dude, can you show up and play starting shortstop for us? Yeah, sure, no problem. Because I don't know if you're familiar with Emily Walden on Twitter. She does a lot of prospect work. She'd gone out to the Arizona Fall League in 2018. And she was interviewing all the players as far as who has the best makeup, who are the guys that are really, really good guys in the Arizona Fall League. And two names kept popping up. One was Nico Hoerner, and the other was Jahmai Jones, an outfielder for the Angels, in the Angels system. I think he's going to be in the major leagues this year, or maybe he was. I don't. But it was Jones and Hoerner were the names that everybody talked about as far as who's the best dude out here. And Emily headed over to ask Jahmai Jones, so, who do you think? Jones pointed his bat at Hoerner and said him.
Well, yeah, I think when you're coming up, there's a mutual respect with players, and even when you get to the majors, I mean, players know who work hard, and they know who's going to really turn out, and they have a good idea of that stuff. But when you talk about the makeup of this Cubs team, now we got to talk about the overarching question: who is going to be able to watch these games because of the Marquee Network? I know you wanted to get into this a little bit. I personally, I'll give you my quick 2 cents on it. It was inevitable. I think the Cubs are an organization that want to be exclusive with their fans, but I just kind of think that maybe the timing was wrong. I think coming off of disappointing season like they had last year, now fans, their perspective is, okay, well, you just, you didn't win the division, you didn't make the playoffs, we had a bad year pretty much all around, and now you want me to pay to watch you guys? You're not on regular TV, so I just think the timing of it was bad. I understand the reasoning for the Marquee Network. But the only other gripe I have, and I'll let you get into this, I just don't think that the average person, and that's who there's obviously Cubs diehards, but, the average person is not going to sit down in December of the offseason, and it's December 18th. I don't think they're sitting down watching a special on the Cubs or watching a game from 2014. I just don't think they're doing that. So what's your kind of overall opinion on the Marquee Network and any other details that you can share?
The footing in Major League Baseball has changed so much in the last 8-10 years. And it hasn't even really been little tiny things. There have been major shifts, and a decent chunk of it was stuff involving, to use the term, tanking. Teams realized, there's a new way, there are new methods we can use to make our team better than we used to be. And with tanking, with the smaller market teams now have significant edges over big market teams in terms of extra draft picks, in terms of international spending. And now the draft and international spending are king. They just are. If you can get that guy who's from the international pool or from your third round draft pick, and all of a sudden he's providing you 2, 3, 4 wins above. How good is Cody Bellinger?
He's pretty good.
How much has he been making?
Not enough. Yeah,
Nothing.
not enough.
He's been making under $1 million a year and putting up 5, 6, 7, 8 WAR years. He's been fantastic. That is what everyone's looking for. When you talk about the White Sox, you're hoping that Jimenez and Nick Madrigal, when he shows up, and Luis Roberts, they're hoping that these guys are all 2, 3, 4, 5 win players when they're making $1 million a year or less. Because then, with the other guys, you don't have to look for as much from them. It's all different now. And the Cubs, when they were putting Marquee Network together, they were thinking, hey, we're going to have a really good team, and it's going to naturally flow, and people are going to want to watch this. And once the ball started rolling, the ground changed, and the ball ended up going in a different direction because the Cubs really expected to be the team in 2021, but everyone else realized, hey, wait a minute. If we can commit ourselves to making sure that we have a really good pipeline, you know who has a really good pipeline that nobody's talking about now? The New York Mets. Historically, they've been, well, we have some pitchers, but we don't believe that hitters really exist. Now, all of a sudden, they have Alonso. They have Jeff McNeil. They have 3 or 4 guys in the top 100. I think all of them are hitters. When you have teams that all of a sudden, wow, that team is stacked. The Dodgers are absolutely stacked. And the Cubs have, well, we have Nico Hoerner.
So
you need more than that now, and it's tough. There are going to be a whole lot of fans who are completely left out on the Marquee Network, and it's going to really suck for them. And the Cubs expected to be good in 2021, but around about 2017, early 2017, somewhere in there is where it really started to change a lot. The Marquee Network was already going. They knew what they were going to do. They knew they needed to get in. They knew they wanted the money that the type of money that the Dodgers were getting, and the Dodgers are getting all the money, even though the fans aren't watching the games because they can't. It's horrible from a fan perspective, but from a Dodgers perspective, it makes it really easy for them to go out and be able to afford Mookie Betts.
Yeah, I think that's the gripe. I think that's the issue that Cubs fans have is like, hey, you're telling me that this is going to be great for me, and you're putting this facade on that, hey, this is for you, this is for the fans. We want to connect with our fans on a different level, and Cubs fans are like, okay, well you're not winning right now, and you expect me to pay for this team even when I'm not at the games. I already pay prime prices to get into Wrigley Field, and you want me to pay even more even if I don't go to the game. So I think
it's horrible from a
the problem
horrible from a fan perspective.
Yeah, the problem that I think they're going to really run into is the people who live down south and on the East Coast who are Cubs fans because they grew up in Chicago. And they could have got the game on WGN, or they could have they had that access, and now they have to make a decision like, okay, well, do I buy MLB at bat? I don't know the availability of the Marquee Network in certain states, or what carriers they have,
or Florida, or Louisiana.
I don't know the details on that. I'm sure that's easily accessible for everybody, but I think that's just an issue that they're going to run into. Talking with Tim Huwe. He's a Cubs pipeline expert. I'll call you an expert, Tim.
I appreciate it.
You can follow him on Twitter at Tim815. Final question for you.
Fire away.
I think as a baseball fan, I think they're going to be fine. I think last year was one of those years. I think every team has them when they're
it just doesn't work
when they're competitive. I just think it was a bad year. Their bullpen was terrible. But that's one of the most unpredictable things for me is you have no idea how your bullpen is going to be, no matter what kind of arms you have, and you just got to see how it works. So,
oh yeah, you can walk in and say, I know our bullpen is going to be very solid, and then round about July, it's like, we better find 2 or 3 more relievers because these guys aren't getting it done.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you saw what Washington did at the deadline.
Was great until he wasn't.
That's true. Although he will probably consistently be one of the best Cubs relievers for a long time. Yeah.
Pedro Strop is the all-time leader in pitching appearances for the Cubs in the postseason.
Yeah, on a consistent basis, he was thrown out there.
Yep.
So the final question is, what do you think? I know this is tough, but their win total projection hovers around 83, 84. Some of them have it at 86. So when the season comes to an end, are the Cubs in the playoffs?
Since Rob Manfred isn't getting his 7 teams in, I don't think they do this year. I think 83, 84 sounds about right. It could be a bit lower, could be a bit higher, but I think 83, 84 sounds about right. And hopefully this is a year where Cubs fans accept that, it's not going to be a dynasty. Let's sit back, watch it, enjoy it, and hopefully things work out well. And it was different following it back in the 70s. You'd watch and you'd figure, well, they're going to lose anyway, but I might as well laugh at Donnie Moore getting blown up.
Yeah.
And, that's part of what Cubs baseball is about. It's like, I don't know what's going to happen, but, gosh darn it, I'm gonna support these guys, even if it doesn't work out totally as we hope. There was one question that popped up on the
oh yeah,
Twitter
absolutely
feed.
Yeah. So the question was, thanks for reminding me. How terrible of me.
No problem.
So
I just didn't want to.
Yeah. So Ryan from the Big J and BB Show, check out their podcast as well as Tim's, the Pre-Arb Excellence podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. The question was, obviously this Kris Bryant talk is hovering still. He lost his grievance, which pointed another finger at the Cubs. But the question is, who is a good fit and a good trade partner for the Cubs and Kris Bryant? And what kind of package gets returned in that trade for that third baseman?
I'll let you go first because I have my answer, and my answer is not going to sway. But if you have anything that you want to go with, and I'll tell you what I think after.
So I think, the first answer, the first thought is simply off of the fact that there's an affiliate there. I think the first thought is the Phillies, and that's because of Bryce Harper. That's because they're in search of a third baseman. The other one to me that would be interesting is the Texas Rangers. And I'm having a hard time putting a finger on it, but I just think that if he goes anywhere, the best fit for him would be Texas. And as far as the return the return package, I don't know Texas's I don't know their system.
I can tell you a name. What they have a third baseman that came out of one of the 87,000 really good Texas baseball schools. Josh Young, Jung. He's a beast. He's not the beast in the 6'4", 240 kind, Arenado type of, but
Sure.
young, hits the ball, he runs, he makes the routine plays, he makes the really tough plays. He's just the kind of guy that, isn't that what you're looking for in a third baseman? He can hit, he can run, he can throw, he can field.
Do you think they're patient with him, or do you think they, that it's a possibility that they go with Chris Bryant? I think it relies, it's leaning on the fact of how close are they. I personally think, I just think that the way the chips are falling, I mean, you could say whatever you want about Chris Bryant as far as his production, but he didn't have the best year last year, and he hit 31 home runs. So,
well, I think I was amused by people saying, "Oh man, he wasn't clutch." Well, let's see now. Most of the season I spent listening to minor league games. But when I finally started getting back to listening to the Parent Club games in late August and early September, there was about a 2-week stretch where Bryant, A, had a bad knee, B, had really bad shoulders, and C, had 3 home runs in the 7th, 8th, and 9th innings that turned it from the Cubs were trailing to the Cubs were leading. How isn't that clutch?
Yeah, in a season that's...
Isn't that what he's supposed to do?
Yeah, I just kind of think that... I think teams are gonna look past the injuries that Chris Bryant has had. Can you say he's injury prone? I suppose you could say that, but I just think Chris Bryant, the value that he brings to a team and his ability to be such a good hitter is far more valuable than the things that you have to deal with the banged up injuries. I think he's a very valuable piece. I think no matter what team, I think he's getting traded. I originally said I don't think he makes it to opening day in a Cubs uniform, but time is kind of winding down. I don't really see him.
Yeah, the arbiter sure took his time.
Yeah. So is he a deadline trade? Yeah, I mean you could. I think he's getting traded. No questions about it. A return package. I think you're looking at, from a Cubs perspective, I think you're looking at an MLB player and probably 2 high prospects. I think he's extremely valuable, and I think he would bring a lot.
My take is, I keep looking back to the Aroldis Chapman trade. The Cubs were desperate to win in 2016. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They were willing to give everything away to improve their bullpen so they could win in 2016. And they did. That is what the Cubs are looking for now.
Yeah, they're looking for that desperate team, yeah.
Texas, I don't care if it's Philadelphia. A lot of people like to say, oh, well, I was looking at the most recent Baseball America list, and this team is only rated 26th or 28th. They don't have a very good pipeline. Hogwash. Everybody has a very good pipeline. I spend a bunch of time tracking college. It used to be college teams would stick a kid at third base. Well, I know he only hits 197, but he's kind of good with the glove. There were a whole lot of teams who were doing that 15 years ago. Now, because nutrition, because weight training, because the load in swing mechanics, every team has a guy who can play third base. Texas, the state of Texas, the college third baseman, there's probably 10 of them that, if it plays right, just guys in Texas in college could play Major League Baseball rather well. That's it. Now you throw in Florida, you throw in California. Third base used to be a very difficult spot to fill. But now you can find guys, you can develop them. They're not going to be Chris Bryant, I don't know what wins above you want to place on him as far as this is what you can expect from a Chris Bryant, but you can locate guys. Texas has Josh Young. Philadelphia has Alec Boehm. If anybody's willing to say, you know what, we need Chris Bryant in 2020 and 2021 to get where we want to get, make a trade with that team. You have a team that, well, he might kind of help us, but I really don't want to let it. Just stop talking. If the team really wants Chris Bryant, yes, I will give you my next unborn child. That's the team you want to trade with.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Back when, I don't know how many of your listeners remember the second Chris Archer trade. All the Chris Archer trades are fascinating. That will make a great book because all three of them were entirely different and completely hilarious. But Jim Hendry realized he was about ready to lose his job if he didn't get 3 million fans into Wrigley Field that year. That was it. If you don't do your job and get 3 million fans in, you're gone. He needed another pitcher. He traded for Matt Garza. He gave up Chris Archer, Hack Julie, and a couple other players, or side pieces going here and there. But the Cubs gave up Chris Archer to get Matt Garza because Jim Hendry wanted 3 million fans that season. That's the trade you want to make. If there's a team that I want Chris Bryant because whatever, if they're willing to give up that one really good prospect, it doesn't even have to be a third baseman. It can be a stud pitcher. Philadelphia has 3 guys I would love to have. And I'm forgetting Spencer Howard, something like that. They have a pitcher who's really good. They have Alec Boehm. They also have a shortstop, Bryson Stott, who played at UNLV last year. And here's an irony: he was training with Chris Bryant over the summer.
So is that your team? I mean, I'm kind of
I love if Philadelphia is willing to cough up at least one with some other stuff to go with it. Oh, I'd love that trade because all 3 of those guys are fascinating. All 3 of those. I want the best long-range return with a guy to take up a spot on the major league roster that isn't terrible.
Sure.
And yeah, my podcast is Pre-Arb Excellence because I realize baseball in the 2020s is how good are your kids that are in their first, second, and third year of the major leagues. That's it. How good are the Dodgers kids? They're fantastic. How good are the Dodgers? They're fantastic. How good were Juan Soto and Victor Robles last year?
Fantastic.
How'd they do?
Fantastic.
if you have guys who are really good, who are making about nothing, your team is fine.
Yeah.
If you're the Tigers and you have, we have a whole bunch of old guys and we're hoping this guy that's 28, we can trade him at the deadline for you're terrible. When the White Sox were, we're going to try this and you're terrible. If you have 3, 4, 5 guys who are really young and really good and making about nothing, then you can go out and get the guy who's expensive. And if it doesn't work out entirely well, last off season, everybody was saying, the Cubs should sign Bryce Harper because if they sign Bryce Harper, everybody's going to want to come play with Bryce Harper because he's really good and he's a. Have you heard anyone this offseason saying, I want to go play for the Phillies because I want to play with Bryce Harper?
It's a good point.
Have you heard anyone say, I want to go play with a guy who's on a, 8-10-year, $30 million per contract? Nobody wants to play with that. What they want to play with is...
Although the Phillies did get Zach Wheeler.
What?
The Phillies did get Zach Wheeler.
Okay. But yeah, it's.
I don't think that's a Harper thing. That was we know the story. I mean, it's fiance.
Yeah.
But
yeah, but anymore now, it's how good are your guys that are there right now, and how good are your guys that are going to be there in a couple of years? A year and a half ago, somebody was feeling very sorry for the Giants and saying, "Boy, I really feel sorry for them." what do the Giants have? What do Giants fans have to look forward to? And from a general basic, put yourself back, 18 months or so, the question made sense, right?
Sure.
Because they were kind of in a sort of a bad spot. And I responded, Joey Bart. Joey Bart was their first-round draft pick. He's a catcher. He's going to hit 35 bombs a year. He's going to hit 280, and he's going to shoot people down when they're trying to steal bases. That's what they're looking forward to. They're looking forward to him. They have a shortstop that's coming up that's going to be good. They have an outfielder who I'm forgetting his name, but he's a international signing. The Giants will be fine if they have good players coming up through the pipeline. And the Cubs are just in a little bit of a bubble now. I love the guys that they have coming up. Myrtle Beach is going to be fun to watch, fun to listen to. If you can't watch on Comcast, and if you can't listen on the radio, and you have a night where you have to get your Cubs fix in, go to MILB.com, find out when and where Myrtle Beach is playing, listen to them. That's going to be the future of the Cubs. Myrtle Beach and Tennessee, those teams are going to have guys who they're going to be important to the Cubs. Either they're playing and being productive, or they're not, and that's why the Cubs are in fourth place.
Absolutely. Well, hey, we'll see how the Cubs do this year. I know first-year manager David Ross. You can follow him on Twitter at Tim815 for everything Cubs of tomorrow. Tim Huwe, thanks for joining me today, man.
Thanks a lot.